CKS is an established think tank and has been spreading awareness about data sovereignty and cybersecurity.
Why did the Chinese do what they did a year back? Lots of things will come up. Maybe they wanted to see to it that
Air Marshal Kaushik, we had Air Commodore Goyal, we had Group Captain Mardikar, Group Captain Mr. Shetty.
By Center for Knowledge Sovereignty, CKS. CKS is an established think tank and has been spreading awareness about data sovereignty and cybersecurity at strategic, political, and national levels. CKS is a non-partisan nationalistic think tank which has been spreading intellectual contents with focus on the spheres of technology, public policy, and research. CKS is honored and privileged to host from our platform series of 5 webinars, Thus Spake Generals. Second in our series, we are honored and privileged to have today Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, PVSM, AVSM, SC, SM, VSM, retired. He is an alumnus of Officers Training Academy, Chennai, commissioned to Fort Kumaun in September 1977. The general officer, in his illustrious career of 39 years, has served in various types of terrain and participated in all major operations, and has served in important and sensitive command, staff, and instructional appointments. The general officer was decorated with Shaurya Chakra in Operation Meghdut. General Sanjay Kulkarni has commanded 26 Rashtriya Rifles, Kumaun, 11 Kumaun, Mountain Brigade of Tawang, and an infantry division at Likhabali. He's an alumnus of all the prestigious institutions, including NIDS Japan and National Defense College, New Delhi. The general officer has also served as COS of Leh Corps and Eastern Command before being appointed the Director General of Infantry. Now, I request Air Vice Marshal Pranay Sinha, VSM, retired, moderator of the session, to take the program further. Viewers, AVM Pranay Sinha retired in September 2018 from prestigious Software Development Institute of IIF in Bengaluru, and since then is working as advisor to Bharat Electronics Limited. He's an active member of our think tank. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, viewers, and thanks, Dr. Deepa. Viewers, Dr. Deepa ensures that all our troops are totally fed up. She provides ration. She's expert ration expert, sir, and combat ration expert. She has done. She is ex-CSIR scientist from Central Food Research Institute and trained at Defense Food Research Laboratory. So she is the one who keeps the troop moving. Viewers, two things. Please put your questions in the chat box so that I can take up. Again, depending on the time, we'll take up. And please put it in because it's time to read 10 lines. So I will not come in between. Here is General Kulkarni, Ladakh Standoff, and the way ahead. Sir, over to you. 40 minutes for you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Talking about Ladakh, most of us will be saying we've done about a year of the Ladakh Standoff and what is the way forward. But if you ask me, this Ladakh Standoff is not a year. It's been there since 1949. And that's where, and to what we have come to like is 1949. But if I still further go back, 1842, 1846, look at the way and look at how far behind these particular disputes have been there. There have been, I would say, a bone of contention on whose is what and which area belongs to. So it has a long history. But if we ask ourselves a simple question, why did the Chinese do what they did a year back? Lots of things will come up. Maybe they wanted to see to it that COVID-19 is the right time and opportunity that they could well pin down India. It could be because they saw us very close to the United States. They thought that it is the right time for them to teach India a lesson. A lot of things will keep coming, and a lot of people keep saying, no. It was that Darbuk Shok DBO road that was being constructed became the cause. Yet another will say, no. 370 article abrogation, the Union Territory of Ladakh we made, that irked them a lot. No, it was again insistent that Aksai China's ours irked them a lot. If you ask me, all these are well there on the fringes. Ladakh Standoff primarily to be able. The Chinese are wanting to convey just now, a year back or now, ever since 1949 and the time they became the People's Republic of China in 1949, and from the time they entered Tibet in 1950. It is from that point of time, if we just go back a little into the history, we will soon realize that 1947, when we got independence, we had said to ourselves that we have inherited what the British have given. Now, what is it that we have inherited? We inherited boundary. The Britishers gave it to us. And from India, all that became was Pakistan, and the rest of it was India. The western boundary, what we call the Ladakh part of it, was there written boundary undefined. So it was still under the process of not a total this thing. We accepted McMahon to be there. Now, did the Chinese accept? That is the most important thing. The Chinese, whether they accepted or not, is a thing which we never inquired or asked or whatever we saw at that point of time. What was it? Still, we go back into the history, we find the Sikhs who had Gulab Singh as the Raja of, and Zorawar, who was his general, they started expanding the empire. And when Zorawar lost to Tibet, and when Gulab Singh's nephew Jawahar ensured that they defeated the Tibetans over there at that point of time, and that the Treaty of Chushul, or the non-aggression pact that was signed in 1842, defined not the boundaries, but both the Sikhs as also the Tibetans, suzerain to the Chinese, understood where the boundaries lay and none interfered. So there was a Treaty of Chushul, 1842, call it the Treaty of Chushul, call it the Non-Aggression Pact, but it existed between the Sikhs. Now come 1840. On the horizon, we have the kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir, the Sikhs having lost to the British. Enter Gulab Singh, who is now crowned as the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. And with the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, 1846, they become suzerain to British. Now, the words suzerain and sovereign have to be understood. Chinese don't see suzerain as what we talk about suzerainty. So you find that the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, Gulab Singh, suzerain to the British, as a Maharaja, is independent of everything. In fact, they got to have a residence in Kashmir much later after 1840. So at 1846, when the whole thing was being done, that was the time when Lord Hardinge tell the Chinese at that point of time that would it be okay that if we had a boundary, not for any other reason, they knew that Gulab Singh had generals, just go and occupy far more. They didn't want that the empire must now start touching the Russians. They were quite happy. The Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir occupying Gilgit-Baltistan, occupying the area of Ladakh and the entire whatever we have today as Jammu and Kashmir, including that of what Pakistan is occupying in Kashmir. So all of it was of the Maharaja, and it was okay. The Chinese did not respond. In 1846, the Chinese did not respond. They were quite happy. Probably they were weak at that point of time. And after 1839, that's where the century of humiliation with the Chinese keep talking about again and again, that it is a century of humiliation from 1839. It carries on. The Chinese kept mum. They didn't say anything, and it was taken then later by even Curzon that, well, it seems to be accepted by the Chinese. And it was primarily in the interest of the British that they didn't want Maharaja Gulab Singh to carry on extending his empire, which subsequently it would be very difficult for the Britishers to control it. With that in aim, and with that as a backdrop comes 1911, and that is where we find the People's Republic, or you can say the Mao Zedong, overthrew the nationalist Chinese, and the nationalist Chinese and Mao's total revolutionary group. You find that the real turnover, change, everything that comes now in China is from 1911. 1914, we have is what is the similar agreement we talk about. We talk about the McMahon Line is concerned. And this McMahon Line, again, the Chinese initially, they did not ratify it. Since they hadn't ratified it, that is where it stayed on. The time was like that. 1914, the First World War. After the First World War, then came the Second World War. In between, the Chinese were extremely weak. Nobody bothered. The Tibetans enjoyed total freedom. They had their own currency, they had their own passport, they had their own communication, they had their own postal. It was an independent country. 1947, when India got independent, Tibetans used their passport coming to Delhi, India, going abroad. They were going around on the Tibetan part. It is then where the Chinese at a point of time did represent to say, but we said, well, they are an independent nation and that is what it is. Seeing all this, the Chinese thought that it was time that they took Xinjiang province and they took the Tibetan autonomous. And this complete Tibet was then annexed by Chinese in 1950. And it carried on. By 1951, the entire Tibet was annexed. Now, when you look at the Xinjiang province has its own story and history, primarily with the view to defend itself. The Britishers wanted to have something as a buffer, but the Chinese took over the Xinjiang province, called it the new province. It was early the entire Kashgar. Then you have certain names that we still hear about. Daulat Beg Oldi, you have the Yaqub Beg, who was part of the Kashgar, what they call it the Kashgaria. But the Chinese came back, took back all of it again, and they call it the Xinjiang, the new province. So we have the Chinese take Xinjiang, the Tibetans reasonably independent. The Chinese were weak. They hadn't done anything. And since they hadn't done anything, the Tibetans, with their own passport, they were all. It is at this point of time when something which I don't know how much of it, even in 1947, at the point of time when the government of India wanted the Tibetans to ratify their 1914 treaty, they did not. And at that point of time, and the Tibetans also did not ratify, they did not even attend the first independence celebrations in India. So that was the kind of a flux situation was going on when the Chinese annexed that point of time. A little later, they find that Pandit Nehru accepted that Tibet of China in 1951 when the 17-point agreement was signed by the Tibetans themselves, whether it was under coercion, under pressure, whatever be it so, it was signed by the Tibetans with the Chinese, and Chinese thereafter became suzerain and under the control of the Chinese. Tibetans had lost. Now it is the sovereignty was entirely of the entire land, that of the Chinese. So with that as a backdrop, we find that where is it? Now, once Tibet, we accepted, not for any other reason, because it was so much better that once the Tibetans themselves had accepted to go under the Chinese sovereignty, there was the doubt left, there was nothing left, and everything was all okay. What happens thereafter is very important. 1951, all this happened. Now, the area of Aksai Chin, what we talk about Aksai Chin, the Chinese consider that as a part of the Xinjiang province. All along the British, there are certain names that keep figuring again and again, and those are that of, when we refer to, again, the Johnson-Aggar line. Now, the Johnson-Aggar line had Kunlun Mountains, that means they're running from Karakoram along the Kunlun Mountains, that means the entire Aksai Chin, a part of the British India. Subsequently, we have the Macartney-MacDonald line in around 1899. It had line drawn along in which Aksai Chin became British India part. So that is the British, when they grew, they decided that it would be part British India. And so the Aksai Chin got divided from that point. All along, we have accepted the Johnson-Aggar line, the line that divides India from China. The Chinese from day one said it was the McDonald-Macartney line which was important and not the Johnson line. Now, what is the difference? Between the two comes Aksai Chin. Aksai Chin, which is part of the Xinjiang province by the Chinese. The Russians accepted Aksai Chin as part of Tibet. So that is how the whole thing, it suited the Russians. The Chinese wanted to do it that way. It suited British India very much because Aksai Chin was part of it. Because at that point of time, they saw Chinese as a good buffer, bad buffer, capable buffer, not capable buffer. Whether Afghanistan, what it could be, or whether Hunza province, whether it could be, aim was to keep the Russians at bay. And more than anything else, the British were quite happy to have a kingdom like the Jammu and Kashmir taking care of the whole thing. Now, if that was so, right from 51, and after that, 1959, when the Dalai Lama, it is at that point of time when we hear of the word 7th November 1959, what is it Chow En Lai decided to give to India? They said, we have a certain amount of plain line. At that point of time, the Chinese seemed to be inclined to accept McMahon line with whatever that be. So on the Western front, they said, it would be status quo. That means whatever we have, whatever they have with them would be theirs, and the subsequent, whatever is left, it would be that of India. 1960, when India, rather the Chinese, when they went in war with then Burma to be able to settle the boundary, they accepted the McMahon line with Burma with a different name. Here also, the Chinese have always been insisting, maybe for a psychological ascendancy, a different name. When we call it the line of actual control, they would at one point of time want to call it the line of active. Always a kind of psychological ascendancy over the person. Followers of Sun Tzu, that the Chinese are, that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy. Now you find that the Chinese, irrespective of the kind of dynasties that they will be having, the first of its kind thousands of years back was the Xia dynasty, Xia, X-I-A. And now the 25th dynasty under, I would say, custody, Xi, X-I. And that is where it's not the communist regime. The communist regime also feels that they have been ordained by the heaven to govern. And therefore, the first dynasty, and as luck would have it, or the coincidence as it have it, the 25th dynasty, which the communists take themselves and they intend celebrating 100 years in 29, with total pomp and show to say that heavens gave it to us. We are the centers of the universe. And whenever the heavens didn't want it, the dynasty, but whether the dynasties changed or not, all the dynasties in China were absolutely what we call autocratic, and central control was tremendous. Now, in Ladakh, over a period of time, what is it that the Chinese feel that in Ladakh, more than anything else, they were very keen on the Western sector that they do. They've always felt India is the only country which can sort of spoil their part. And if that be so, what is it that we can do to India? Keep it boxed in South Asia. That is the first and the foremost thing. Let LAC, LOC, LWE, when I say LW, the left-wing extremism, all of it keep India occupied within the South Asia so that it cannot in any case have two tigers in one mountain. It is the Chinese are firm believer, the mountain will have only one tiger, and that is China. China feels that in Asia, it is India and India alone. Now, do we look at it, if you see, do we feel that China, the kind of a mindset that we were talking about all this while, would be able to, or even would want to have a settlement of the boundary dispute? Definitely, the answer is no. They would not want to have a boundary dispute settled with India. Definitely, the answer. It's very interesting. Narasimha Rao, along with Jane Dixit, who was then the foreign secretary, accompanying him to a trip to Japan, and later who became the national security advisor till 2014, Shiv Shankar Menon, who had 2 tenures in Beijing, was then posted in, and he himself had said, Mr. Dixit asked him, is there a way forward? Do you think we can settle this boundary dispute with China? If that be so, what do you think can be done? Now, Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon, who was into it, who been 2 tenures, subsequently became an ambassador also, and then the foreign secretary, and also became the national security advisor. But at that point of time, he told Mr. Narasimha Rao and Mr. Jane Dixit, the settlement of the boundary dispute seems difficult because the Tiananmen Square had just about happened, the Soviet Union had just about sort of dissolved, and at that point of time, to have a border settled with the Chinese seemed difficult. However, a peace and tranquility kind of an agreement could well be thought about between them. Now, this is what Mr. Narasimha Rao at that point of time, the peace and tranquility, and that was in 91. And finally, in 1993, the peace and tranquility agreement was signed between the two countries. Now, let's put it this way. Did the peace and tranquility agreement serve its purpose? Well, if you ask, to a large extent, yes, because for almost about 25 years, there was along the border. But to say so, I will just come a little later. But yes, India had just about taken on developing. India wanted to rise economically at that point of time. And definitely peace and no tension along the border helped China, because China also was wanting to see to it that it wouldn't want to want United States to do what it had done to Soviet Union. So it was a win-win. Now, when we look back and you see all of it, you realize the 1954 agreement. Imagine 1954 agreement, the trade agreement which said the following passes you could do trade with, the following areas of spiritual, this thing could visit, like you could go to Mansarovar, we could go to Kailash, they could come to Sarnath, they could go to Gaya, and things are those kind, Lipu Lake, Mana, all these passes that we talk about were open for trade. But the Chinese were quick enough to say, well, these are only passes. This has nothing to do with border. That's what the Chinese are. The Chinese would never, ever allow anything to happen what doesn't go their way. So, because the Chinese have a core interest. And in core interest, Tibet, Taiwan, South China Sea, Hong Kong, East China Sea, all form their core interest.
Paresh, you can check.
AVM Sinha, there is a storm in this part of the.
Can you hear me?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. I think the light has gone, but you can continue. We can't see you, but you can continue,
I
please.
think the lines went on primarily because of just a sec. Let me.
We can see you also now. Just for viewers, there is a
massive
electric
wind.
Yeah.
I'll unmute myself.
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
No problem.
No problem.
Okay.
No problem, sir.
So I was on the Peace and Tranquility Agreement. The Peace and Tranquility Agreement, it did serve the purpose, but then the Chinese are known to gain time. To gain time with a view to ensure that their infrastructure develops, that they are prepared, and at no point of time they must be embarrassed. If there's a war which the Chinese have ever won, it is 1960. They have never ever won any country. And that particular thing, the Chinese are very, very concerned about their images to the Chinese. Now, in the Peace and Tranquility Agreement 1993, well, what happened? Subsequent 96, the confidence building measures from wherein we had the control point that came up to ensure that we don't transgress into each other's area. The 1954 agreement I told you about. So we had the 1954 agreement, 93, 96, 2003, 2013, 12. In fact, in the last two agreements, when Mr. Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, the present Foreign Minister, Jai Shankar, was the ambassador of India in China. So all of them are part of it. They know exactly what it is. I'm sure he must be feeling extremely bad that despite all the kind of efforts that everybody had put into the agreements to ensure that peace and tranquility prevailed all along, only thing that happened was there were no shots fired. The damage happened. If it was the 1954 agreement, immediately thereafter at Lipu Lake, the things erupted. Now I must give you a very interesting incident. I finished my first command of an infantry battalion in Doda, and I went for my second command, and I didn't know where. They told me that I was going to a place called Lungrola. I went down to Lungrola, and I realized that Lungrola has a post called Tagraro, which overlooks the Wangdung camp, the Sundaron Chu. That incident is occurred in 86, and it took 7 years for us to settle it down before we came down to the 93 Peace and Tranquility Agreement. And that's where it is. And now you can well imagine how the Chinese got in there. Just because the McMahon line was drawn with a nib which could take anywhere between 10 and 15 kilometers, but on normal logic, if you stand at Lungrola and you stand just above the Wangdung camp of the Chinese, where we were to stand, and if you were to see, you'll see the Thagla Ridge. It's very clear. The watershed, absolutely the watershed principle stand. But no, the McMahon line, when it was drawn, particular portion, they ensured that it was on the southern side of the McMahon. This is the way the Chinese are very manipulative. Chinese have to be taken, what they say, what they talk, they have to be taken with a pinch of salt. All these nice agreements are with a view to gain time. And why to gain time? To ensure that at no point of time they're embarrassed and they're prepared 100% on all fronts. Now, what have they done over the years? And what have we done over the years after, say, 1962, when for almost 2 decades there was nothing, no sort of good relationship with China at all. But after 93, till date, good relationship. And despite that, all that was happening. In 1999, I would go back again while commanding, and when I was in Lungrola, there's a post called, another post along there, Taksing. Surprising, here's where the Kargil is going on. The Chinese are building that particular road which subsequently that we hear about between Finger 8 and over here, like Doklam had a 73-day standoff. You can virtually say the same duration standoff that we had over there with an infantry battalion. Arm to arm, we were not even 1 feet away from each other, ensuring and holding. Nothing, no shots fired. But the amount of tension that creates over there is amazing. So the Chinese are known to put that pressure, military coercion with the view to be able to put pressure. Now, all these agreements that are taking place, all these agreements which are there, why is it then the Chinese threw all of them into the dustbin and did again what they did a year back? In fact, I'm sure even they would not have accepted it, even have wild imagination, much that what happened in Galwan was premeditated. What they did and they were ready for was premeditated. The Patrol Point 14, definitely, you find that Galwan, you do not in any case a disputed area, but yes, they came via Galwan. Even we can go via Galwan. Definitely, the Shok is not very far from Galwan. But what happened in Galwan is the turning point, I would say. And to that, the credit goes. If it hadn't been for Babu's complete decided that they are going to give the Chinese a bloody nose. Obviously, we lost 20 of our soldiers, definitely lost, but they lost far more. But that was the turning point. And that is where they realized that Indians now are not going to accept what the Chinese want. The Chinese want Indians at any point of time to be in the hierarchical order. They feel that they're destined by the heaven. They don't say, they have a very poker face, but they expect you in the seating plan, where should you sit? Where should you stand? How long should you sit? How long should you stand? Everything in the Chinese culture is known. And they expect and they want India to adhere to that. Not India is an old civilization. India has its own ethos. If Chinese are expecting, that is what they're expecting. That is why you find that all countries in and around India, where we call the string of pearls,
10 minutes to go. 10 minutes.
Are giving in to the Chinese will, or the Chinese are wanting to do what they're wanting to do. With India, now each of these two countries have a stand taken. We have said Aksai Chin is ours. We have said whatever the AAC, what they talk about is definitely not known. It's a perception that we all seem to believe that it runs along this. Yes, we know it. On ground, everything is virtually decided so that the transgression does not take place. But exchange of maps between the two countries was hardly, not even for 15 minutes. Not even for 15 minutes, for over the years. So you can well imagine what the Chinese have been doing. They don't want to exchange the maps. They would want to do what they want to do. The Chinese want to do. And what is it that they want to do? They want to ensure that they will. It is they, none but they, the center of the universe alone will rule Asia. There's no question of anybody sharing the seats with the Chinese. That as a kind of a mindset that the Chinese have, and there's no way. Now, I would give you some references or some kind of incidents that I've had with them in various border personnel meetings that I've had as a brigade commander and subsequently even later as the chief of staff. So I realized that we as Indians are generally good. There's no denying the fact. Now, I would say that since the relationship between India and China is lowest there, we can't go lower than that other than have a fight. But would there be a fight? The more important is, would India and China go to war? Doesn't appear so. We must keep our gunpowder dry. We must be ready. There is no denying the fact. The only way the Chinese understand is to be in a position of strength. The Chinese themselves wouldn't want to sign a single treaty when they were not in a position. And they realized it when they signed the Treaty of Peking. And that is the treaty which they feel very badly. They should not sign anything. And therefore, when we deal with the Chinese, it's very essential, never, always from a position. And what better? As I said, Galwan has been the turning point. Galwan has given Indians feeling that yes, Chinese is not 10 feet tall. He can be shown his place. And once he's shown his place, he will work hard. Imagine the amount of money that he has invested in infrastructure in Tibet. Unimaginable. Unimaginable. If there is G129, there are 2-3 parallel roads that are coming. 219 has gone up to 10,000 kilometers from what it was 2,300 to 10,000 kilometers, and it'll be ready soon. The kind of railway infrastructure that is coming in, the kind of airfields that are coming, tremendous amount of it, the villages that are going to come in. I must tell you, whenever I used to catch hold of these hunters of generally the Tibetan hunters are very fond of the herbs that will be coming up, and they will be coming this side, and I would be standing there if I was, and I would ask them as to, I find some lovely huts are coming up with blue tops and blue rooftops. What are these? They would tell me that the Chinese have given them all equivalent of about 50,000 rupees and 75,000 rupees, some of them depending upon the kind of, to develop their houses, to develop their entire villages. And so therefore the grids had come up. You could make out from a distance that the blue rooftop belonged to a certain community. Obviously, you find that there were the Tibetans themselves. You have the good Tibetans, as per the perception of the Chinese. The good Tibetans were brought closer to the border. The bad Tibetans were sent back. And therefore, you found that even among their monks also, the Tibetan monks, they wouldn't, only the ones who probably were in thinking with the Chinese, they would all be there. In the entire Tibetan Autonomous Region, because at Bumla, every time I would meet them at Bumla, the Tibetan Autonomous Region had 92% Tibetans. The Tibet itself, the Tibet region itself had 6 million Tibetans and 7.5 million. That's the kind of a thing. In Xinjiang province, you have almost 45% Han population, the balance of them are Uyghur. Even if you saw the Chinese themselves, see the buffer, the entire Han population, 92% of the Han population of the 1.4 billion Chinese are along the eastern coast. So you have huge 1.6 million square kilometers Xinjiang, 1.2 million square kilometers Tibet province, 1.1 million square kilometers Inner Mongolia. So you have a buffer all along, and by the South China Sea, 3.5 million square kilometers is the South China. So that becomes the buffer. What do the Chinese have to say? The Chinese say, we are not going to allow anyone sleep outside a bedroom. So that is the way. So for the East Coast, that's where the Han population is settled. The entire South China Sea is a buffer for them. They have to ensure that this area remains safe. So that is where you find Paracel Islands and Spratly Islands have all been taken over. And here they're looking at Tibet, core interest area. They have Xinjiang, core interest area. They won't take anything. South China Sea, the core interest area. This is under no circumstances, it's a red line, not negotiable by the Chinese. We may have $100 billion trade, they care to. The Chinese must be taught a lesson. The Chinese can only be taught economically. They must get militarily strong. There is no denying the fact, if you are not militarily strong with the Chinese, then there's a problem. Right now, they are combat ready. The troops know it's not easy to fight in mountain warfare in high altitude. In mountains, favor the defender. We are not looking at anyone's area. We are ensuring that we defend our area. And the kind of troops that we have, we're fully capable of defending. And which China, nothing like that was shown. And what we have done under Kailash range is indicative that yes, it is possible. When the moment you get onto a position of strength, they do it. But Chinese will, after some time, go back to their old tricks, what they've done. They pull back from figure 4 to figure 8, but they are not given whatever little concessions, initial little relocation. I've said whatever I do won't take long. And thank you very much. Should you have any questions, please shoot.
You can conclude, sir. 2 minutes just. You may, please.
Okay. To conclude, I will say, in Ladakh, the only way forward is if they are expecting there will be a settlement with the Chinese. My reading is there will be no settlement with the Chinese. The Chinese will continue to do military coercion, will continue to pressurize India as much as they can. We have to get militarily strong. We have to ensure that we don't give it. The salami slicing that we hear about, there's no question of it. Whether anywhere and everywhere, we have to hold on. We must be able to. Chinese are not 10 people. That is number one. Number two, the Chinese know that today, the Indian armed forces are in a position that they can give a bloody move. After all, what matters in mountain warfare in high altitude? 3 things I will say. You need boots, you need bricks, and you need bandobast. When I use these 3 words, what do they indicate? Boots? Whatever be the technology, you can have any amount of artillery arsenal, you can have any amount of whatever you wish to. You require boots to hold ground. And that's where the Chinese being conscripts and not capable of being able to withstand that kind of a regular this thing, are at a disadvantage right now. BRICS, we should be able to withstand any amount of artillery shelling, any amount of things that they do, and still be able to fight back. Bandobast is what is required. They must be fully, troops must be acclimatized, troops must be taken care of, troops must know how to sustain themselves. Look at it, there's no way, I would say there's no way China can do anything in Ladakh, or for that matter anywhere, because Ladakh or Himalayas is our battle. We have to fight it, and nobody else will do. The maritime, again, Indian Ocean, we can, but with Quad alliances and agreements that we have, we will be able to hit the soft belly of the Chinese. But if the Himalayas are held, the strength that we have, the capabilities that we have, if the nation stays united, and if the nation can, modernization of the armed forces, keep the morale high, the troops self-motivated, India is, the Chinese can do nothing. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for the great historical perspective, and that too coming from a person who, sir, has been in the Operation Meghdoot. He knows the terrain backhand, and the historical perspective was there. What a lovely talk, sir. And the way ahead, boots, bricks, and bandobast, that's the announced. We have to have the boots, the militarily we have to be there, and we have to fight it the battle. Sir, I'll take 2-3 questions so that other things get clear, because most of the questions have come for the Tibet. In fact, Girdhar Mamaji Sahab has asked when we are getting back our Kailash, Mount Kailash, when we are freeing Tibet. Mr. Vilas Rajwade, Piyush Saxena, all are asking how Tibetans can be introduced into this fight. Why not we take Tibetans more? So this is the crux, sir.
Yeah. The last bit of yours got, the voice got cracked. What is it, the last bit?
How we induct Tibetans more in our army, Tibetans.
What about army?
If I can take the liberty of repeating AVM Sinha, how do we involve Tibetan subjects in our armed forces?
Yes.
The civilian subject.
Civilian
subject, yes.
All right. How do we involve civilians into the... all right.
Civilians, and we induct them in army.
Holding Tibetan refugee passport.
Vinit, can you please repeat it?
Yes, sir. Holding Tibetan passport, this Tibetan civilian population.
Okay. How do we keep them with us? That's what they want to know?
Yes, sir.
See, the first this thing as to when can we get Kailash, the Mount Mansarovar, or the Mount Kailash for that matter. Well, it is their area right now. And as I said, even in 1842, the last battle that was fought, and General Zoravar was actually cut into 104 pieces, because there was no way they thought this General Zoravar should come back to life. And that is where we still have his grave made for his greatness. Even the Tibetans respected that, yes, here was a general who actually fought hard, and well, he lost his life. But then subsequently, as the nephew of Gulab Singh Jawar, who went and again defeated the Tibetans, and we had this Treaty of Chushul, this thing. You know, if you ask me realistically, well, yes, are we looking at it from that point of view? Because India is a democracy. That is the first thing that we must remember. Everything doesn't happen the way the Chinese are totally communist. They're looking at it. They don't want democracy because they feel that democracy comes in their way, and autocracy. So to say that when do we get it, I would not guess so easily to be able to say, yes, in the next 20 years or 10 years, we should be able to get Mansarovar or Mount Kailash. That is why the Treaty of 1954 is there basically to ensure that we visit those places, and they also come and visit Sarnath, Gaya, Ranchi, and all these places of historical interest. For Buddhism, they could also visit, and we could also visit. That is the first question. The second thing is, as you got the Tibetans, see, the Tibetans cannot have a passport now. It's over. Because after the 17-point agreement that the Tibetans themselves signed, we could say it under coercion, we could say whatever be it so, but the 17-point agreement signed by the Tibetans in 1951, well, that's all over. The Tibetans have surrendered their suzerainty, and they are now The Chinese are sovereign owners of the entire thing. Though much that the Chinese have said, we are not going to come in the way of the Tibetans in terms of their culture, in terms of their language. We won't enforce ourselves. Tibet accepted as part. Expect Tibet to be having a passport will now require a world effort. The entire world united to be able to tell China that, look, vacate Tibet. Have we reached that level? Do we think realistically? I don't think that kind of a situation can really come, because the Chinese have invested so much into Tibet. They've invested so much into Xinjiang province, and all of it into infrastructure, which is nothing but dual purpose infrastructure, which is there to develop role model villages, to be able to make the Tibetans the Chinese way of thinking. Even the 15th Dalai Lama, they would well have their own way. Look at the Panchen Lama, they would have their own way. So it is not, the Chinese would interfere and not let anything happen. If it hasn't happened, then the Chinese were the weakest. It did not happen. Now today, when China is looking to be numero one and to be able to compete with the United States of America, looking at by 2049 to be where they are, I don't think we should even think of, because it would lead to something which is catastrophic. It will not work out. I don't think we can think it from that point of view, that when can Tibet have its own passport? Tibetans can have their own passport. No way right now, because we also, as a government, have accepted that Tibet.
Sir, Chinese are wary of loss of face, wary of body bags. So tomorrow what happens? Accidental escalation takes. We are standing eye to eye. Some trigger gets pressed. We go. What happens?
You're absolutely right. Chinese are, after the one-child policy, the body bags is something that the Chinese cannot stand. And Galwan is one thing that would be very evident about it, number one. Number two, the Chinese are absolutely very concerned with their prestige. At no point of time would the Chinese even think doing anything else or even firing the Indian till that victory is there. And that is not possible for China. If it is not possible for China, China will never do it. Chinese will get as much as they can into a position of strength. They will do military coercion as much as they can. Believers of Sun Tzu that they are, the supreme art of war, to subdue the enemy without a fight. Fight is not what they look, because obviously the one-child policy has put them off. There's no question of them body bags being accepted. Even after Galwan, when because of the media, they saw that the Indian soldier was greatly respected. The state looked after them, and they did not hesitate to say that we had lost 20 soldiers, and each of their families were taken care of, and each one of them rewarded also. That is the way. And the Chinese themselves, population, started questioning the government of China as to, what have you done to our soldiers who have died? What have you done? Why are you hiding the fact? And finally, the Chinese came out to say that 4 of their own people are. So there are a large number of them. It can't be wrong, because the Americans have stated the number, the Russians have stated the number, out in the open it is. So the numbers being large, but the Chinese will not accept. It took China 32 years to accept that they had lost 800 soldiers in 1962 war. The Chinese will never accept. So let's not get into their thing. China will not accept it. Yes, that's the Chinese vulnerability. We must exploit that vulnerability. If Chinese are sensitive to the body bag, we must ensure, if there is a way, if the balloon goes up, it is the Chinese who will, and we will ensure that the Chinese body bags and their honor is totally put, destitute, as a result of which, that is what will make the Chinese step back.
The last question of the evening. Next question I will send you with mail, sir. The last question is, sir, we vacated Kailash range. Have we done mistakes? Bargaining chip gone, Gogra and Jetsang still left.
I just heard.
We vacated Kailash range. We vacated Kailash range. Have the we lost the bargaining chip, sir.
See, this is what happens is, I would say, yes, this is something tricky, and also at the same time, did we gamble with the Chinese, hoping that if with the alacrity with which they pull back, they would also accept for other friction points, especially Hot Spring and Gogra, that they would be able to pull back. Though I would say the troops have reduced, the relocation of troops has taken place. We are not eyeball to eyeball in contact, but yes, what we are looking at, the complete disengagement at Hot Spring and Gogra has not taken place. The kind of disengagement we have seen at Finger 4 and Finger 8, that has not occurred at Hot Spring and Gogra. Yes, to a large extent, I would say the Chinese, as always, deceitful conduct, as always, not being able to live up to what they want. They will stick, they will say, yes, spoke of the south of Pangangso, that's what we've done. We have not given you a commitment of the other. Yes, we will go in for talk, maybe the 12th round of talks, maybe the 13th round of talks, any number of talks that can take place. Yes, the Chinese have. There can be no relationship with China hereinafter until the Chinese go back, and unless there is peace prevailing along LAC, there is no question of having good relationship with China. The Chinese should have done what they have done at Finger 4, Finger 8. They should have done similar thing, pull back Hot Spring and Gogra, which they have not done. Hopefully, I'm sure the Chinese won't want to lose their face anymore, and they should be able to do. Well, the talks are, hopefully, I'm told the 12th round of talks have to take place. Maybe we succeed in telling them to pull back.
Thank you, sir. Viewers, the way ahead is the general has given his decree, more boots on the ground. Be ready to face the bricks, give them body back, and yes, the bandobast could be there. Your ISR perfect and proper. Now request Sri Vinit Goenka, the man behind our think tank of CPS India, an ardent champion of data sovereignty, and the way that Twitter and the ruckus is going on, he had taken this issue a year before. He is the governing council member of former task number of IT and everything related with IT. Over to you, Vinit.
General Sir, Ram Ram.
Thank you.
It's been always a pleasure.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be able to talk to you all. And I wish people realize it, understand, and I've been able to convey what they want.
Sir, before I say my words, I would like to recognize some people who have joined us yesterday and today. We had yesterday Air Marshal Soman, Air Marshal Kaushik, we had Air Commodore Goyal, we had Group Captain Mardikar, Group Captain Mr. Shetty. We also today have, a very prominent person, Srimati Vijay Lakshmi Vijay Kumar from the Center for Soft Power. We have Dr. Rabi Behra, who is Director NIC. We have people from the intelligence community. I could see many of my friends being there. We have Dr. Govind Bhargav, all the way from the northeastern part. He's the registrar of one of the prestigious universities who is there. I can see Pradeep Ji. I can see Colonel Manohar Ramtri, with whom I have worked way back in 99. Colonel has been a fantastic person and officer. Colonel Nishar Sethi, Colonel R. Ganeshan. I could see Wing Commander Deepak Prasad. We could see Wing Commander Anil Hosangabe, if I'm pronouncing it properly, Brigadier Joshi. And I also saw Lieutenant General Ajay Chandele hearing you, sir. And all of them, I'm sure, were really impressed by your talk. And so let me also tell people a few things about you, which I think Deepa missed when she introduced. After joining the 4th Kumaon, I think in 1977, there were 2 ops which people should know that you were involved in, Polar Bear and Meghdut. And how can somebody forget Meghdut? Meghdut was on, I think probably it was on 13th April 1984, if I'm recollecting the date perfectly, yeah, sir. Going over that 5,000 meters of the K2, the highest plan, fantastic view, sir. Nobody can forget that view when you see that particular Saltraj Reach, which is passing through the K2 range. I'm sure you remember the day on Bila Fondla when you captured. I felt that, after probably Shivaji Maharaj, somebody could capture a new land in this country, because we don't have any other evidence of capturing land. And you made us all proud, coming from the same place which I come from, sir. Bilafand Lowness. And you said one line: it must be held at all cost. If I'm right, that was the line which you used. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. And I heard Minister of State for the Raksha, Shri Bhamre, speaking in the House, in the Parliament. He said, when the young captain, now general, said it must be held at all the cost, we have held it at all the cost. Sir, yes, from 1984 to 2016, that is almost around, 32 years. The price was very high. Accountants may have how much money they have spent. We don't bother about that. We have given 35 officers, more than 887 JCOs were the cost which we held at. And I promise you, sir, on behalf of 130 crore people, this cost may be whatever high, we will not give a single inch of our land back to them. This is our land. We'll hold it in, sir. Everybody. Today, before the talk started, you met my son, and every third generation who hear your story, they are so proud. When they go back, they will tell, "Ye aadmi tha jisne zameen hamare paas wapas lai." And we are very, very proud, sir. You came, you honored us. You may not know, those people who are hearing right now, their chest is full of oxygen right now. We can actually visualize what happened there that day in Billafont, especially when you landed and you lost your operator. And even without an operator, you were actually there. No visibility, winds were very high. The stories I can go on and tell on behalf of you someday. I want to promise before you go out, sir, that you come back and tell us what happened that 3 days, 13th April and 2 days before that, and how your boys promised you to go without clothes on that particular area, which is minus 39, minus 40, and the just.
Vineet, I must stop you here. I never say you ask AVM Sinha. Without the Air Force and without our troops, it's not possible. To be honest with you, I must have done my job because it was a duty assigned and I had to do it. But the kind of jointness that was there between the Air Force and the Army, and he knows it because he was there as part of the entire Operation Meghdoot, something which is unique. That brotherhood and the jointness that was being seen, one didn't care and one didn't bother. Till one realized later that even carrying 2 passengers in the helicopter was difficult. One had to carry only one, and here they were carrying 2 with load. Yeah, I was carrying my stuff also, and there were 2 passengers also. They must have seen that the choppers are cracking, but the pilots are flying. That is the kind of spirit that was being exhibited by each one. So the credit must not go to me. It must not go. It happened
The
to be
credit goes
me.
to everybody, sir. I remember the country has honored Banna Singh, a JCO, by naming the post as Banna Post, and everybody who was there that day, everybody commands respect from these 130 crore people who won't forget you, sir, for doing that particular job which was assigned to you as a young captain that day. I would like to thank you before a formal thanks comes from the center, Professor Nagratna. She would be there. But this particular is personal, sir. So I thought I should tell you. And people may like to know what was the nickname of this thing, the creed of the man-eaters. And I would always think, why would you be called as the creed of man-eaters? And now I know after 1984, what does it mean by that? And let the common man also know about this particular nickname. Sir, thank you once again. You made us proud. And I hope the war cry, Kalika Mata Ki Jai, goes on there every day, every moment. Dr. Nagratna, for a formal thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good evening to one and all. After that heartfelt gratitude already expressed by Sri Vinod Bhatia, I think I'm just left with no words, but I'll just do my duty of formally ending this talk by delivering the vote of thanks. I, on behalf of Center for Knowledge Sovereignty and also on my own personal behalf, extend my sincere thanks to our today's speaker of the 5-part talk series, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni ji, for delivering an extremely interesting and informative talk on the Ladakh standoff and the way forward. Sir, we thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule to share with us your views on this aspect, which comes from your vast experience and erudition. Invincibility lies in the defense and the possibility of victory in the attack, said Sun Tzu in his Art of War. Sir, your talk has depicted very clearly to us that the Indian Army has always shown both these qualities of invincibility and victory, including in this present scenario of Ladakh standoff. The issue today has not just attracted attention at the level of 2 nations, but has attained importance. In this background, your talk has also given us a very comprehensive understanding of the issue of the Ladakh standoff, including from its historical development. Your talk has also given us an understanding of the issue from geopolitical perspective as well. We're also grateful for you for sharing the possible options that the country must consider in designing its strategies ahead. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody.
I just want to remind the viewers, ma'am, just that next week, General Hasnain is going to come. Next week, next Sunday at 5 o'clock.
I must also mention sense of appreciation and thanks to our team from CKS for organizing this talk and the entire series. Most importantly, AVM Sinha, Sri Vinod Bhatia, Mr. Paresh. A special thanks to our most valued participants for participating in this talk and making it a very grand success. Thank you one and all. Look forward to your participation again in our next talk of this, the details of which will be made available. The time permission of the speaker and the participants, I request to close the call. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Regards. Jai Hind.
Thanks.